Good morning, students. Good morning to all. On last day, we have studied about the public corporations, the features of the public corporations, and the advantages and the disadvantages of the public corporations. And you also got the same study portions. So today also, just we will remind about what we have studied on last day, and we will go to the next concept. Yesterday we have studied about the advantages of public corporations. So when we are conducting the public corporations or in the public corporations, what are the advantages are there? First one is bold management due to operational autonomy. So the public corporation enjoys internal operational autonomy as it is free from the government control. So as we have studied, there is no government control in the public corporations. If there is no government interventions, whatever decisions they have to take regarding the organizations, they can take without any of the hesitations. So next, legislative control. So all affairs of the public corporations are subject to a scrutiny by committees of parliament or the state legislative. So all the affairs of the public corporations is involved by the parliament or the state legislators. So the press also keeps a watchful eyes on the working on a public corporations. So what are the profit, what are the losses, how the the government undertakings are going to established, and everything also will be controlled and governing by the press also. So this keeps a check on the unhealthy practices on the part of the management and the public corporations. So when they are having the eagle eyes on the public corporations, so there is no chance to conducting the misbehavior activities of the members or the workers. So next, the qualified and contented staff. So then the public corporations offers attractive service conditions to its staff. So all the workers will be doing their work without any troubles, and whenever they are taking the more effort to improving the corporations, they will get the good remunerations. So by get the good remunerations, they will have the qualified staff. So as such, it is able to attract qualified staff. Because of qualified and contented staff, industrial relations problems are not much severe. So next, tailor-made statute. So tailor-made statute means the special act by which a public corporation is created. So the public corporation is created by the special act. So it can be tailor-made to meet the specific needs of the public corporations. So what are the needs have to be arranged in the public corporations is already decided by the act. So what are the needs are the required is be arranged in these public corporations, already it be decided on. Next, it is not affected by the political changes. So being a distinct legal entity in the public corporations, a public corporation is not much affected by the political changes. So even so many of the politicians may come and go and they will ruling our nations, but it will never affecting the public corporations. The existing of the public corporations always will be the static one. So it can maintain continuity of political and operations. The policies and operations. So what are the policies and operations? Already it had been maintained and it will be going to maintain, it will be run efficiently without any problems. Next, lesser likelihood of exploitations. So the board of directors of a public corporations consists of representative of various interest group like labor, consumers, etc. So they are nominated by the government. So many of the workers and the managers and the consumers also will be nominated by the government only. So as such, there is lesser likelihood of exploitation of any class of society by the public corporations. So there is no need to arise any chance in the public exploitations. Next, reasonable pricing policies. So a public corporation follows a reasonable pricing policies based on cost benefit analysis. So when they have the cost benefit analysis, they will produce some of the commodities by the reasonable cost of productions, and it will never sell any of the commodities exceed the cost of productions. Hence, the public are generally satisfied with the provision of goods and services by the public corporations. So, what are the goods and services is provided by the public corporations? It will be reasonable and it will be satisfied by the consumers. So, seven advantages also is there in our public corporations. Next, disadvantages of public corporations. So, even though there is more advantages are there in these public corporations, some of the disadvantages also is there in these public corporations. So what are the disadvantages are there mean? First one is autonomy and flexibility only in theory. So we have studied the autonomy and the flexibility functions are there in these corporations, but their day-by-day actions will be proved that it is the autonomy and flexibility will be there only in their theories. So autonomy and flexibility advantages of a public corporation exist only in the theory. Theory means we can say, but really we can't use the autonomy powers because so many of the public corporations still ruled by the politicians. Even if there is no government interventions, because of the fearness of resentment, so the workers and the peoples also have some of the fairness. So in practice, there is a lot of interference in the working of a public corporations by ministers, government officers and other politicians. So many of the departments are there and ministers and some of the government officers are there. So the government officers always will be exploiting the workers in these public corporations. Next, misuse of monopolistic power. So we have studied, so the public corporations by their act, they will get some of the monopolistic power. But sometimes if the public corporations will be misuse the monopolistic power. When they have the monopolistic power, it will be good only for the nations and the consumer. But if they are misuse the monopolistic power, it will be affecting the consumers and whole nations. So public corporations often enjoy monopoly in their field of operations. As it is like that, on one hand, they are indifferent to consumer needs and problems. Suppose if they are not providing some of the goods and services by the reasonable price or in the good quality, if they are using the monopolistic power, it will be affect the consumers. And on the other hand, often do not hesitate to exploit the consumers. Even when they are producing some of the commodities and when they are going to distribute to the consumers, they will get some of the corrupt and they will fixing the more price by their officers. Next, rigid constitutions. So the constitution of a public corporation is very rigid. It cannot be changed without amending the statute of the formations. So what or how the constitutions was done by the constitutions or by the government, the constitutions will never flexibilities. So on the basis of changing the time and the requirement needs of the consumers. So even if the people wants to getting the more commodities and services, on the basis of the drawn constitutions, they will never get. So the public corporations could not be flexible in its operations. Even if the public corporations have the power to produce more commodities, it will never produce because the constitution is limited and it will be rigid. So it will be never produce the commodities. Next, low managerial efficiency. So quite often civil servants who do not possess management knowledge and skills are appointed by the government. Because we have studied the more managerials and the consumers and the laborers also will be required by the government. When they are going to require the laborers and the managers, they may get as a corrupted. Otherwise, the requirement may be happened as in the corrupted measures. So the board of directors of your public corporations and the managers and some of the persons may be decided by the government or required by the government. So when they are required by the government without checking the qualified and their skills, they will not impose and they will not expose the power into the public corporations. So it is like that. The managerial efficiency of public corporation is not as much as found in private business enterprises. So when we are comparing to the private organizations, all the managers, workers and the board of directors have to be work by the fear of the owner or some of the incentives of the work. But here no will happens in these public corporations. So the managerial efficiency will be very low. Next, problem of passing a special act. A public corporations cannot be formed without passing a special act. If we want to establish the public corporations, so in this parliament, some of the discussions will be going to happen. So the ruling party and the opposite party will be quarreling to accept and opposite to the special enacting the special act. So which is a time consuming and difficult process, and not only that, even after enacting any of the act to establishing the public corporations, it will take more time to construct and come to the existence. So hence the scope for setting up public corporation is very restricted. So when they are being like that, so it is not very easy to bringing the or passing the special act and will be construct and come to an existence. Next, clash of divergent interest. So in the board of directors of public corporations, conflicts may arise among representatives of different groups. So in this board of directors or the group of board of directors or the managers or some of the workers or between the workers and the board of directors, may different type of the conflicts will be appears. And such classes tell upon the efficient functioning of the corporations and may hamper its growth. So if any of the problem, any of the conflicts, any of the misunderstandings are arised or is there among the workers or among the board of directors or between the directors and the managers, so the growth of public corporations will never improve. So here the 6 disadvantages are there. First one is autonomy and flexibility only in their theory, because so many of the politicians will be intervened. Next, misuse of monopolistic power. So when they have monopolistic power, if it is used to the consumer, they will get profit. Otherwise, if they are misusing the monopolistic power, so the consumer and the nations also will get trouble. Next, rigid constitutions. So all the rules and regulations or acts, everything is also drawn already on the basis of the constitutions. So the constitutions will never flexibilities. Next, low managerial efficiency. Low managerial efficiency means so all the workers and the board of directors is appointed by the government. So when they are appointed by the government, we will never say as confidentially they will have more managerial skills. Okay, when they have the managerial skills, it will be better. But most of the time, if they are not appointed by truly, so on the basis of the corrupted, they can appointed. When they are appointed by the corrupted, the low managerial efficiency will be there. Next, problem of passing a special act. So when they are passing the special act to the public corporations, it is not very easiest method. Next, class of divergent interest. So among the group of the peoples, many conflicts and misunderstanding will be there. So it will be hamper to the growth of public corporations. Okay students, the next concept is government company. So first we have studied the public undertakings. Next, public corporations. Next one is government company. So these three also may be as different. It is enacted and established by the government. but on the basis of some different act or some different of differentiation only will be there among these three. The government company. So a government company is defined under the section 245 of the Companies Act 2013. So any company in which not less than 51 percentage of the paid up share capital is held by the state government or the central government or by any state government or governments or partly by the central government and partly by one more state governments, and includes a company which is subsidiary company of such a government company. So normally it is the company we have studied. If any of the companies, if anybody want to become as a owner, they must have the 51 percentage of paid up capital. Now if you are considering the joint stock company, the Reliance and the Tata company, so the Ambani only will have the 51 percentage share, own shares. The 49 percentage of the share only going to use. Okay, so like that, if the government want to begin, or if the company want to begin in the hands of the government, so the government have to take the 15 percentage of the paid up capital. This paid up share capital may be held by the one or the state government or the central government, or one central government or two more state government, or part of the share may be the central government, part of the share may be the state government. Anyway, the 51 percentage of the paid up share capital is held by the some of the government. It is considered as a government company. So next, the features of the government company. So what are the features are there in the government company mean? The registrations under the Companies Act. The registrations under the Companies Act. Government company is formed through registration under the Companies Act 1956. In 1956, the Company Act was enacted. Normally, how the joint stock company is going to register it. So on the basis of the same procedure only, the government company is also going to register it. And it is subject to the provisions of this act like any other company. So however, the central government may direct that any of the provisions of the Companies Act shall not apply to a government company or shall apply with a certain modifications. Suppose if any of the ruling parties or made any of the companies, their existence will be continuity. The existence will never come to an end, even there is change of politicians. Next, executive decision of government. A government company is created by an executive decision of the government without seeking the approval of the parliament or the state legislature. By establishing the government company, there is no need to get the approval of the parliament or the state legislature. Even the state government or the central government can have the power to establish the company, so they can have. Next, the separate legal entity. A government company is a legal entity separate from the government. It can acquire property, can make contracts, and can file suits in its own name. So how the joint stock companies can able to get the properties and make the contracts and can file and in its own name. Like that, the government companies also can do everything like a joint stock company. Next, whole capital provided by the government. The whole or the majority of the capital. Majority of the capital means, as I told, the 15 percentage of the paid up capital must be held by the state or central government. So to hold or majority of the capital of a government company is provided by the government itself. But the revenue of the company are not deposited into the treasury. On the name of the company itself, it will be going to deposit. Next, majority of the government directors. Being in possession of a majority of the share capital, the government has authority to appointing majority of the directors and the board of directors of a government company. Normally, those who has the more paid up share capitals, that persons only has the right to appointing the board of directors. So like that, here also the government have the power, or the government has more paid up share capital. It has the power to appointing the directors and the board of directors. So the board of directors and the directors groups always will be the dignity with the government only. Next, own staff. A government company has its own staff, except government officials who are sent to it on deputations. Its employees are not governed by the civil service rules. So even the government company has power to appointing some of the persons. So they will get the appointing not only by the civil services rules, but on the basis of the deputations of the shareholders or the government companies or any of the deputed persons of the government can able to appointing the staff. Next, free from procedural controls. So government company is free from budgetary, accounting and audit controls applicable to the government undertakings. If there is more procedures, norms and conditions, a government company is being free from the budgetary or accounting and audit controls. So there is no need to maintaining the budget or maintaining the accounting and the audit controls. Next, accountability to the parliament state legislator. The annual report of a government company is placed before the parliament or the state legislator. If any of the company is going to undertakings in our nations or in our state, so the government companies has the accountability to submit their annual report to the parliament or the state legislator. Next, advantages of government company. So advantages of government company. What are the advantages are there when we are having the government companies? So first one is board of directors packed with yes man. So one of the advantages of the government company is easy formations. It is not like a public corporations. If you want to establish the public corporations only, we have to get the permissions from the state legislative assembly or the parliament. But for the purpose of establishing a government companies, it is very easy. A government company can be easily formed under the Companies Act just by an executive decision of the government. So what government is going to rule? If they decided only is enough, it is very easy to form it. Next, internal autonomy. So a government company can manage its affairs independently. It is relatively free from ministerial control and political interference in its day-to-day functioning. So all the government companies also can do anything what they want to regarding the companies. So the government companies can manage its affairs independently always. Next, private participations. So through government company device, the government can avail of the management skills, technical know-how and expertise of the private sector and foreign countries. Because normally the private participations always will be applicable or always expected by the government. Even if the government companies always will have the chance to providing the private organizations or the private enterprises, those who all has the good management skills and technical know-how and expertise. Next, easy to alter. So the objectives and the powers of the government company can be changed by simply altering the memorandum of association of the company without seeking the approval of the parliament. If the government want to change to alter or change to one place to another place or any of the changes, if they want to bring any of the change, So it is very easy. So without seeking the government approval or the parliament approval, just simply altering the memorandum of associations, it will be easy to alter. Next, professional management. A government company can employ professionally qualified managers because it has its own personal policies. Next, disciplines. The government company is subject to the provisions of the Companies Act, which keeps the management of the company active, alert, and disciplined. So all the government companies may be maintained the disciplines and that keeps the management of the companies active. Next, public accountability. So the annual report of a government company is presented to the parliament or state legislature. This report can be discussed and debated there. So when they are discussed on the report provided by the government companies, so if it is really truthful or the believeness, the confidence of the consumers will be increased on the government side. Okay students, today it's enough. So today we have studied the disadvantages of the public corporations and the features of the government company and the advantages of the government companies. If you have any doubt, please ask me and just to take the same portions as your study portions. Thank you.